The Heresy Accountabilibuddies Podcast is dedicated to all things Horus Heresy. This podcast delves into the grimdark universe where Primarchs clash, legions rise, and loyalties fracture faster than a Land Raider's track. But it's not just about the lore of the Horus Heresy. The Accountabilibuddies also explore the gaming side of things, from painting and modeling tips to product reviews and ideas to help you in your hobby. So, whether you're a seasoned Forge World veteran or a fresh-faced scout, this podcast is your Vox channel to the galaxy. Expect discussions on lore, modeling, gaming, and maybe even the shenanigans that your hosts somehow seem to find their way into. Remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there are only two things you can count on: heresy and your trusty Accountabilibuddies.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another great episode of the Heresy Accountabilibuddies Podcast. In this episode 78, before we get through introductions, I'm going to go kick it over to our sponsors that are sponsoring our wonderful escapades this evening. Jack.
Do you love resin bases? Then go to our sponsor, Elric Hobbies, for all of your basing and basing accessory needs. Use code HERESYABB at checkout for a discount. Legendary Monument Hobbies. Monument Hobbies is a one-stop shop for all of your painting needs. Use code HERESYABB at checkout for a 5% discount on your purchase. Pop Goes the Monkey. Find maker of third-party accessory bits of arms, legs, backpacks, and more, where you can get 10% off your first order over $125 with code HERESYABB at checkout.
And this evening, my name is John, and today I'm joined by
Brian,
Duncan,
Jack,
and we've got a couple great special guests from the Legioncast. Go ahead and introduce yourself, gentlemen.
hello, Legionaries. I am Warwick of Legioncast. Thanks for having us.
I am Brandon, also of Legioncast. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely, gentlemen. We look forward to talking to you all about how you had fun at Adepticon and all the hobby plans you've got for the future. But before that, we usually like to go through hobbies, our hobby escapades for the past week. So I guess I'll kick that off. So we did our usual hobby hump day hangouts, and this week I was able to get 10 of my Nemesis Ultramarines assembled together. I say assembled because it's like trying to put together a hand grenade that's already gone off, because the arms are from the existing Mark III kit, the bodies of the Mark III kit, the head is from a 40K Reaver, and then the gun and backpack are from Deathwatch, and then the left hand just kind of comes from my bits box and hope I don't explode the damn thing while I'm trying to put it together. So I got 10 of those guys put together on hump day, and then I was able to kind of throw 4 of the special weapons, the Spencer webbed rad missile launchers. I got 4 of those assembled. I'm just waiting for more Cromlech shoulder pads that I'd ordered a couple weeks ago during their big birthday sale. I like the Cromlech shoulder pads because they've got that kind of triangle spike on the shoulder pad instead of having the nice rounded spike like GW has, or just the rivety look. And I've got some of those coming. Other than that, I ordered some of the new legionary decals that we talked about in December, and then that got randomly dropped off the face of the planet until they got picked back up. And so hopefully those will be coming in this week, and then I can start putting those on some of the Marines that I was priming about the turn of the year. What about you, Jack? What have you been doing?
Oh, I took it this easy this week. I got in my hard copy book for Beta Garmin and some decals that were pressed into a bottom of a box that was too small for them. And then I played a lot of video games because I deserve it. I'm special. I'm pretty. What about you, Duncan?
So this week I did a whole bunch of stuff. I'm currently sitting here as we're talking and recording tonight, working on bodies for another 10 World Eater Rampagers, or whatever they're called, the Phalanx Blade Arm guys. Before that, during the hobby hangout this week, I got 10 more of them assembled. I got my sergeant mostly done assembly-wise. I'm assembling in batches right now. I ordered some very different looking phalanx blades from a company in Poland, or sorry, not Poland, Czechoslovakia, or the Czech Republic, whatever it's called. Forgive me for being old. Called Chaos Temple. Their chaostemple.cz is their website. They have some what they call power falchions, but which I am going to be using to pick out the sergeants, along with a different crested head than the regular bunny ear head for the world eaters. I like the way these blades look. They look definitely unique. They don't look power swordy in a way, but they also don't really look phalanx in a way. So I think just having them be this way is going to make the sergeant stand out just a little bit more from the crowd of generic crazed madmen with close combat weapons who want to hurt people bad.
I got some really cool pistols from them a long time ago. That's a good company.
I've seen when someone linked me to it in a Facebook group, showed me some of their weapons, and I picked them up off of eBay. And when they sent me their the stuff, they sent me this card from them, and I'm like, ooh, so now I have a direct line, and it's cheaper than eBay. And yay, I can get more. So if I wanted to build some really special dudes for more veterans for the world leaders or whoever, I can do that too. But that's really all I've been working on this week. Like Jack, I also got my Beta Garmin hardback in. Like Jack, my Beta Garmin hardback came in a box. And like a couple people, my Beta Garmin came with a crushed box corner. And my book has a crushed box corner, or has a slightly crushed corner as well. Fired off an email to GW about that, and I got no reply because, what more do I expect at this point? But beyond that, I've did not get a game in, wanted to, that didn't work out. But I did get a chance to go to my friendly local and switch out a box set that I got at Adepticon of a Blood Angel Combat Patrol for current 40K. That plus a very minimal amount of money got me another one of the Legions of Astartes battle groups. So I have, yet again, more Space Marines so that I can sit here and build more crazy Berserker boys. Brian, what have you gotten done this week, sir?
I already had my Beta Garmin book in, so I managed to meet up with a player that's new to Heresy. I think he'd played 5 games before we met up on Thursday, and we played a mission Strike and Fade out of the new Beta Garmin book. And it was very interesting. It was a great experience. Really cool dude. I look forward to playing more games with him. I built a Durac Rask for my Death Guard. And minus a a Thunder Hammer, because the one that I bought was not quite what I needed. So I'm going to have to come up with something different. And I also built a Cult's Abomination or whatever, the new assassin for traders. And I got him and Rask primed. And that about sums it up.
So you're missing a Thunder Hammer?
Yeah, well, I could probably use a few, to be honest, but we'll figure it out.
Not Terminator size?
Some Terminator, some regular.
I got a pile of Thunder Hammers from Jamie a while back. I will look and see if I have any of those left that I have not used. How many do you need?
Probably 4 or less.
Okay. I'll get with you after the tonight's cast is recorded, and I'll see what I have available.
Yeah, I think
Much
between the two of us,
appreciated.
I think between the two of us, we can get you hooked up.
Yeah, we got you on this, brother.
Bros helping bros.
Yep. Oh, and hey, it looks like Dan has arrived. Dan,
What's up?
hello, sir. What have you done this week, sir, hobby-wise?
Honestly, not much. Was doing some more reading in a new book, and I worked on some just throwing some contrast paints and washes on some D&D miniatures. So nothing heresy related. And that's it.
Fair enough. Well, John, this is the point where we normally would talk about what's come out.
Still got our Legioncast gentlemen.
Oh,
What have y'all
you're
been?
right. What have they been doing?
What have y'all been up to?
Well, last week I was able to get my first game in with my Night Lords, which I talked about on our most recent episode. I was pretty happy with that. I learned a lot. I lost, but I still learned a lot. I'm really happy with how they're coming together. I got my first test model painted for them a week or so ago, which I was super happy with. And then this week, I was kind of digging around and I dug out my old Beastmen for fantasy. So while I haven't gotten any hobby work done for Heresy, I did find my old fantasy Beastmen, and I'm going to be taking inventory of them and seeing what all I need to piece together to have a straight up fantasy army ready for Beastmen. Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, so I was able to get a game with my Emperor's Children in on Monday against another one of our co-hosts and his Sons of Horus. I got absolutely eviscerated in that game. It did not go great for me, but I'm still trying to figure out these Emperor's Children and how they work. I am also this week taking a dip into the old world with some rats. So I am currently assembling a unit of storm vermin, and I have piles and piles of rat sprues here.
So, I will say I do have a lot of Empire myself, so I don't know what these giant rat men are. I've heard rumors, but I think that they go well on the end of a cannon.
Yeah, I just decided I wanted to, rather than go too far into the old world, I just made a pit stop in a New York City subway.
There you go.
I'm personally gonna say this. I'm glad to see the return of the Bretonian men-at-arms. That will let me finally get my Imperial Guard / Astra Militarum / Solorox / Militia built up more. I've been looking forward to those guys coming back out for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually takes us into the pre-orders this week. So coming up next week, we've got the Bretonian Men-at-Arms. We've also got some other Bretonian releases. The only reason I bring up the Bretonian Lord on Royal Pegasus is a lot of the Bretonian sculpts don't look very knight armor to me, and they look almost more Mark II armor to me. Especially if you look at the optional assembly for the Bretonian Lord, he looks like if you did a head swap, he'd be a really cool librarian for White Scars or something like that that you could pop off onto a jet bike. And then again, the Bretonian Men-at-Arms are coming out. There's a huge sheet of decals that would be really good for doing up a militia or Solar Ox list, as well as some Warhammer Plus stuff that's coming out this week for painting some like Xenos tech things. Heresy Thursday this week claims that this is the last article for a while, and we got previews of the termites for Limp or Legions Imperialis. I was kind of hoping that we'd get those in full size 30K scale for plastics, but looks like we're gonna have to wait a little longer on that. On the third party side, we got previews for Joy Toy Trigger Fellhand 1/18 scale and the Space Wolves Contemptor Dreadnought. What really separates this Contemptor Dreadnought from the previous Sons of Horus and Imperial Fist ones is this one has all of the sculpted Space Wolf parts that came on the old Forge World Contemptor Dreadnoughts. So he's got the knotwork sculpted into his legs. He's got a wolf pelt on his right shoulder and a real big gold embossing and stuff on his chest. And then for weapons, he's got an autocannon and a heavy bolter, whereas the other ones were one gun and one fist. So I really wish there was a way to customize these guys a little more, that you could order custom weapons and things like that. But I'm sure if your friends have 3D printers, they have the ability to scale things up from what they had previously for 30K scale stuff. You could customize them that way. That's pretty much it for third party stuff. It's again, that Limp article said that this is probably going to be the last upcoming Heresy Thursday article for a while, that they're going to be replacing it with old world articles for the summer, and then Heresy will come back in the fall and winter. But I really hope that they kind of keep us up to date with things that are coming out. You know, we're coming up to the end of our roadmap that we got before with whenever the command squad finally comes out. So I really hope that we get an updated one and we kind of get an idea of what's going forward with Heresy, because I don't want us to just kind of be stuck here after this book drops. Opinions?
So I was thinking about the Joy toys, and I'm not super big on collecting action figures or anything like that, but I do think they're kind of neat. My only gripe about them is that they look super, super clean. And if I ever got any of them, I would end up weathering them so that they actually like looked like somebody had painted them. That's kind of my only thing about them. What did you guys think of all of that?
I've got a few of them, and yeah, you're right. They're pretty clean. They're not just that, but they look really plasticky. It's just like one color, and that's
Right.
pretty much it. And so
They look they look very factory built, and that's not how basically anyone paints their actual models. So I think if I ever end up getting them, I like I said, I'd end up doing something with them.
yeah,
I
you
want
usually
to
get them
get
pretty
one of the
cheap
Iron
later.
Warriors ones. I really want to get with the Iron Warrior ones. And I want to dirty it up because it looks, like you said, way too plasticky.
Yeah, I think the McFarlane ones did a little better because theirs are all, you can buy the pre-paints or you can buy the pre-primed ones and then do it yourself. That's kind of my problem with the Joy toys is they're more expensive than the McFarlane ones. They're a little more posable. They're a little shorter, but you kind of don't have that customizability in them.
Yeah, I agree there. But I'm also looking forward to seeing what they do when they eventually release a World Eater one. Kind of like I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when Games Workshop puts out a World Eater exclusive Praetor. James Workshop, please. Please.
Yeah, that's the other thing that kind of sucks about not having more Heresy articles. That means that Raven Guard and Salamanders and World Eaters and all the other legions that don't have Praetors and don't have stuff coming, that means it's probably not going to happen for a while.
Please.
Yeah, and it's really disappointing because we're at the end of the last roadmap we got, so there's no idea of anything upcoming, right? Heresy Thursday was the only thing we had that was kind of any sort of constant or plan, and we're kind of done there.
We do have the bit that we were told or shown with the teaser 8-second video or 10-second video at Adepticon of the Mechanicum plastic.
Yeah, it didn't have
Mechanicum.
It didn't have a date of any kind,
Nope.
did it?
No,
Yeah.
it did not have a date. It did not have specifics, and it had very little information. It just had the red planet, and said, I think it said soon. And as far as I'm concerned, that means sometime between now and the heat death of the universe. So I'll take it whenever we get it.
Sometime between now and next Adepticon.
Yep. I'd be happy with that if we get it, but all before then. But then again, I also still want my World Leader Freighter, so I'm not going to complain too much because James Workshop might hear me and think that I'm talking about squats again and reset the clock. So,
well, I will say the other thing I've been working on is that's hobby adjacent is I'm planning my trip to Warhammer World. So end of May, June, beginning of June, I'm gonna be over there for 10 days or so, and of course one day is the Warhammer World Day.
Have you ever been?
I have not been. The only time I've been out of the country is to Canada. So no, I've never been to England at all.
Warhammer World is fantastic. Make sure you take time to eat a meal there. The food is really good.
I've heard that. Yeah.
It will fill you up too.
Pardon me?
I said it will fill you up. I had one of their burgers and it stuck with me.
I also and I'm a big soccer fan. My son wants to be a soccer coach and stuff, so I also picked up tickets to go see England versus Iceland in a friendly at Wembley Stadium. So I'm geeked for a lot of things in England, and Warhammer World and that are going to be a couple that for sure I'll be coming home to talk about a ton. So.
well, while you are there at Warhammer World, don't forget you have to do some kind of. There's a contest thing they run there where you have to try to locate specific assassins on one of their giant tables, and if you find them, you get a chance to purchase a specific certain exclusive model they have. I believe. I'm not.
Good luck. Good luck.
I'm not 100% certain how that one works, but apparently it's super difficult to do. But give it a shot and let us know how that works out.
The table is gigantic. It's like the size of an average American living room and 3 stories tall. You have to find an assassin in that. And if you do, they'll give you an assassin for free. but it's limited to like, I think it's one a week or one every day or something like that. So I would bug someone there to make sure that it's still running. But
Okay.
it's still a free model if you got the time.
Yeah. I'm sure that the exclusive models will end up with a couple of them in my bag on the way home, even if I don't need them, because that's the way I am. So
That's fair. One thing I will make mention of, I haven't seen a lot of new fiction novels being announced by GW lately. Not in 40K, not in Fantasy or Sigmar, and not in
They're
Heresy, or
they're
even Scouring, which is something that by now I had kind of hoped we'd have at least had Scouring Book 1 an idea of what it was going to be, if it was even going to be.
Warhammer Community just put out an article the other day that was asking fans what classic titles they want reprinted. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They're making room in their whole lineup to reprint old titles. And there's stuff like Titanicus, Soul Drinker, Ice Guard, Death Watch, Silver Skulls, and then like a bunch of old world titles too, like Greyseer, Bloodborne, Head Taker. I thought that was kind of interesting that they're doing reprints, but like you said, I kind of noticed that too. They're not announcing a lot of new titles, are they?
Yeah,
We had that Erebus book kind of sneak out, and then really nothing since then or anything. I mean, I think there's been a couple of on the pre-order articles. I think there was an Orc book last week, which reading that would probably give me a migraine. But
have they even really announced the Eidolon novel yet, or has that just been been found on Amazon?
I think it was announced
officially
in one of the things.
Okay. Yeah.
did they ever do any Badab novels, or did they just cover it in the 2 IA books?
So there was a little bit of stuff about her on the Tyrant. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. I should call him Huron. There was a bit of stuff about him novels wise, but I don't think there was anything about the actual Badab War timeline.
Yeah, he became a 40K character, and I think that's pretty much it. They really haven't touched on his 35K-ness.
Yeah, they never really made mention of him.
I would be all over those books if they started putting out novels on Badab.
Yeah, I kind of figured there's a couple
or an IA or reprint the IA books, for Christ's sakes. I can't spend an arm and a leg to get the original, so I'd love to have reprints.
They've been given reviewing access. They've been transferring of digital and giving you access to some of them on Warhammer Plus. That's about as close as you're going to get, I think, from GW.
Well, speaking about fluff, unless we have any objections.
I'm just kidding.
Well, that's fair. Gentlemen from Legioncast, you all are actually the reason that I reached out to you all and asked you all if you all wanted to come on is because you all gave a very generous donation to help John during his time of issues. And we as a whole really appreciate that. And I've been listening to you all for a bit. And the fact that you all did that was super cool. I did not know you all beforehand, and I don't know if you all had interacted with any of our other members beforehand or not. But it just goes to show the collective coolness of what we consider the general hobby community. And so I asked you all to come on and talk about something, whatever you really wanted to. But one thing I'm kind of hoping you're going to talk about is the novels, because Lord knows I personally have read all of the Heresy stuff. I've read a lot of the 40K stuff and a lot of the fantasy stuff too, but you all really dedicate yourselves in some ways to working on the novels and walking through the novels, and I personally enjoy that. So would you all like to talk about that a little bit, or talk about yourselves, who Legioncast is for those of our listeners who may not know you all?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started, we actually both started playing 40K back when we were in high school, and I think that was about 5th edition, and got out of it for a while, got back into it at the end of 7th edition, flipped over to 8th edition, Speaking for myself, I didn't super enjoy 8th edition. Kind of got out of it for a while, and then I know Warwick, I think you did as well at about that point. And when the Heresy 2nd edition got announced at Adepticon, we both kind of decided let's check this out. So we bought in, and we were Warwick came down to my house. We were putting together our Age of Darkness boxes, and we were listening to some lore channels talk about. We listened to one in particular talk about Horus Rising, and we were like, "Hang on, we could do this pretty well. Why don't we record our opinions and blast them out onto the internet? Nobody's ever tried that before." So we started Legioncast, and we decided we were going to just go through the entire series. Really, for anyone who's into the lore at all, but we thought of it as kind of people like us who were getting into the Horus Heresy game at the time of the 2nd edition launch. It'd be nice to start fresh on the books and go from there. So we've done, I think like 24 books like that. We're about to do Betrayer will be our next book. Really excited to do that one. But that's kind of the quick spiel about us.
I'm looking forward to you all doing Betrayer. That's not
Yeah,
quite my favorite of the entire series, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah, Betrayer is a fantastic book, and I've said it a couple of times on our podcast. Aaron Dembski-Bowden is easily one of the best authors that Black Library has for them. I think he generally always does a fantastic job, and I'm really looking forward to it. It actually is book 24, Brandon. So you're really close. And then I think there's a little bit of a slog between coming up with the next couple of books, just because I think they're kind of slow. I've read ahead in the series so far, but I think we have a really good time just kind of breaking down these books or talking about our favorite parts, what we like about the authors, what we dislike about the authors. And sometimes it can be a bit of a gripe session just because some of these do get pretty repetitive, or it feels like they walk back characters. But overall, I think we have a really good time, and we generally focus on the more positive aspects of the stories. At least that's how I feel.
Well, of all the stories up until 24, what would you say is your favorite book overall up to this point?
No Fear.
Why is that?
I'm an Ultramarines player, and so when I first got into 30K, and you can ask Brandon, I was struggling to figure out what Loyalist Legion I was going to do. I thought about Space Wolves, I thought about White Scars, I thought about several others, and then I was like, I really like No Fear. Would I be just a box art fanboy if I went Ultramarines? And Brandon's like, no, dude, just do it. If that's the one you want to do, just do it. And I think that No Fear is a book, does an incredible job of not making Ultramarines look like automatons that is so often described in 40K. So in 30K, you really see the Ultramarines kind of at the height of their Legion culture, or just really leaning into their strengths and really being themselves, and not this kind of almost watered down version that we see in 40K, just like, these are the poster boys. They always walk and talk the exact same way. And in No Fear, you get to see several different Ultramarines functioning differently than their counterparts or than their Legion brothers, and then approaching problem solving in new and unique ways. So when you see Remus Ventarnus and Aenid Thiel operating in different theaters during the betrayal at Calth, their approach to problem solving is somewhat similar, but with basically just kind of taking the brakes off of no more, there are no more rules, we're just going all out. And Aenid Thiel's approach to it is, I'm going to raid the Primarch's personal armory and start killing these demons on the ship. And then Remus Ventarnus's solution is, I'm going to use the enemy's weapons against them. And so they kind of tackle these crazy situations in these somewhat similar but different ways, and I think that's really interesting. And Deanna Abnett does a fantastic job in that book, really capturing the superhuman emotion of the betrayal at Calth, and it's just fantastic. Like, you see Gilliman lose his temper, you see Lorgar kind of go mask off a little bit and call Gilliman a pompous a-hole, and it's great. I really enjoy that book. Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, so the easy answer for me is Angel Exterminatus, because I'm an Iron Warriors lover at heart. And I think that Graham McNeil does a really great job at kind of humanizing Perturabo and really helping us understand who the Iron Warriors are, not just the generic bad guys that they get typecast as regularly. But I'm actually going to go a little bit off the path here because of my Loyalist Legion that I picked as well, which is the Dark Angels. I'm going to pick Descent of Angels as my favorite because I love this look at these like Dark Age technology knights and really what life was like before the coming of the Emperor. And obviously we don't get that in 40K because that's just not a thing. But I think that we get really into, as we get further into the heresy, it's more about, the Marines and all of that. And I like seeing that there was a lot of these cultures that existed before the Great Crusade reached out across the stars, and kind of what did those look like. And I had a lot of fun with that book as well.
That's interesting because
I agree, Dan.
the book was a slog for me, and I tried to read it twice and physical reading the book, and I couldn't get through it, and I finally got the audiobook, and I forced myself to listen through it, and I don't hate it anymore, but it was just so slow moving and different that it took a long time for me to get through it. And everybody has their own opinions, right? And reasons to like things, and it's no fear. I might like Mark of Calth better, but they're both awesome. And I play Ultramarines for a lot of the same reasons you do. I was in 40K for a lot longer than you were, and it was like the perfect blue Smurf boys, and they're so flawed and characterful and heresy instead. But it's interesting that one that I would not ever pick as one of my favorites in Descent to Angels is your favorite. So it's very interesting.
I think looking back though, if we look at like how we were introduced to heresy, because we kind of majority of this cast started with book one, Horus Rising, and then went through it. I think for us it was almost a culture shock coming into Descent of Angels and things like that. And obviously, if y'all are coming at it afterwards, knowing, hey, this is only book 5 or 6 in a series of 64, it's not like you're waiting week to week. If you're watching, back in the old days when we had one episode of TV a week, if you got a filler episode or a recap episode, it was a culture shock. You were like, what is this crap? I want back to the action. Whereas, there you're like, oh man, for us, some of it, it was kind of like Dan said when I originally read it. It was like, where'd the heresy go? I want killing. I want to go back to the killing. But when I reread it, coming back to it, it was like y'all said, it was like, oh, this is cool because it's different. It wasn't what I wanted at the time, but now that I understand what I'm looking at, I like it.
I also kind of have a similar feeling there because I got started back in book 1, as John said. And when I first read Descent of Angels, I was I'm not going to say put off by the book, but it felt like it wasn't quite what I was wanting. And as I've been going back and rereading, I have approached a few novels with trepidation. Kind of at the time, I didn't think highly of this. What do I think now, going back into it? And
no, sorry,
that's. I got about halfway through that one most recently when I kind of hit pause because some other stuff was going on reading wise that I wanted to get into, and I find myself disliking that book a lot less than I originally did. So that's definitely a good point there from John, and the way you all are coming at it is definitely also an interesting way to think of it. I've got to ask because of this, what did you all think of Battle for the Abyss?
Boo. I was not a fan.
Ugh.
No.
Okay. So I gotta ask.
I'm gonna agree, but
I hate the book personally.
So there's one part I kind of like, and then I do want to interject because I like a little bit of it. I like the idea that was one guy trying to outsmart Lorgar, because that's what Lorgar tries to do later, is try to outsmart the Chaos Gods.
That's fair.
And that was actually going to be my word bearers was going to be that guy on the Abyss. And it's going to be like a boarding party. So that's what I was going to do. I kind of clammed onto that. I hated the book itself, but I liked the idea of it. So sorry.
So the villain, I can't remember, Admiral starts with a Z something.
Zadkiel.
Zabkiel, yes. He is a very generic mustache twirling villain, and he just doesn't do it for me. And the whole plot of we're going to go destroy Macragge in the middle of Ultramar, the 500 worlds. This is a 40k story, not a 30k story. When the Ultramarines are confined to Macragge and that's their only base of operations, that's a great plot. But in 30k, when they've got 500 worlds to call home, blowing up, one fortress world for them or one recruiting world for them, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I do like some of the character interactions we get in that book. Like I like Bringar, and I like I think the Ultramarine is Cestus. I think their relationship is kind of interesting. However, the characters quickly get boiled down to being kind of a trope or kind of a cardboard cutout of you're just kind of a generic character. And we never really, the fact that spoiler alert, none of them make it out. So we don't get any character development is the big problem with the book. And as far as moving the narrative needle for the series goes, it doesn't. Nothing happens. So even though Ultramar is Macragge is ultimately attacked in the end, the attack is stopped, but it doesn't really like raise the threat level any, because Calth is happening around the same time. So the Ultramarines are very busy elsewhere. So, by the time they get back to Macragge, they're like, we've seen it all and we don't really care.
Yeah, it's kind of a Shaggy Dog story in that in comics you can basically throw into any existing timeline. Spider-Man saw Shaggy Dog and then his day continued. So basically it's a completely contained story in that it didn't actually affect the entire world in itself.
I think
it actually did affect the entire heresy. I really did, but not in the way you're referring to it. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So go ahead with what you were saying.
Oh, I want to say that I really liked some of the characters, like the World Eater Skrull, Captain Skrull. I think he was awesome. Like when that World Eater's lieutenant or whatever is trying to give a speech when they're trying to take that little cathedral or chapel or whatever, and Skrull runs out of ammo with his bullet pistol, so he just chucks his chain axe and cuts this guy's hand off. That is like the most World Eater stuff I've ever seen, and it was so cool to watch or to read about. And he gets some really interesting character moments, but again, like, nothing really happens. And I think arming going back to Admiral Zadkiel, arming him with a power rapier, I thought was a really weird move, because it's not really they know that they're going up against other Astartes, so they would be armed with a more robust weapon than a metal needle. I think it's just it's kind of an artistic weapon choice, and it really blows me away of how inconsistent the book it is as well, because remember, Ben Counter also gave us Galaxy in Flames, which is up there in like my top 4 books, or top 5 books, I would say. Fantastic book. And then the next one he does is Battle for the Abyss, and then we don't see him again in the 30k range.
And that's the point I was going to raise.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he wrote Galaxy in Flames, which is a phenomenal book, seminal for the entire Heresy series. Then he did the Abyss book, and then I think because of how poorly it was received at the time, he was asked not to do any more Heresy books, or just not invited back to the Heresy as a whole.
Well, Galaxy in Flames had its problems too. If you think about Karn went completely crazy, and then technically died, and then didn't die, and so there was, I think that Battle for the Abyss was kind of a quiet, this is your last shot, but they didn't tell him that.
That would make sense to me.
I'm trying to, I get my word bearers books confused. Which is the one where they end up on Cadia with the Custodes and summoning the demon and kill all the
First
Custodes?
Heretic.
Is that First Heretic? Okay.
First Heretic. which is a phenomenal book.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I couldn't remember if that. I got those confused. So, yeah, that makes more sense.
Brandon, did you have anything to add about Battle for the Abyss?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with it. It's a 40K book in 30K. I think that happened because if you look at Horus Rising through Fulgrim, it's very clear that they had laid out their plot. This was, well thought out, well in advance, very planned, and then they hit that and they were like, "Oh, this blew up huge. Just write more books as fast as possible." And so that's why you get weird ones like Descent of Angels and Battle for the Abyss, and we just start bouncing around all over the place. But I think Ben Counter.
Wait till you get to Pythos.
I don't want to talk about Pythos.
Oh,
Okay,
dude.
yeah. No, I mean we can refer to the entire series at this point. I mean, the entire thing is already written.
Yeah.
To me, in some ways, while I love the series and I love the novels, and I love just about everything about the Heresy as a whole, it does feel that after somewhere right around, I don't know, book 6-ish, maybe even book 5, they kind of said, "Oh Lord, this is going crazy. The fans are buying it. We're hitting bestseller novel lists. What are we going to do? Just let it eat. People here, write whatever you want to write, and we'll make it Heresy somehow." And this feels like one of those that was done as a filler to stall for time and yet fill up a publishing spot.
Well, I think
it was Heresy.
I think the other thing to think about though is it's the same thing to some extent what you're talking about with Sculpt for different legions and everything too, right? It's all of the people that do this are that write novels and that sculpt, all the artists are artists and they're on commission and they're given, except for a few key things, they're given a commission and they're out and they're like, write this to a deadline. And maybe they meet the deadline, maybe they're way faster, maybe they're way slower. There's a lot more to writing a book or being an artist and sculpting something than being able to map it out in order. And like you said, they've got key points they want to put together, but because it's not one big sequence from beginning to end, and they never were going to publish it as one big sequence because things are going all over the universe is what's going on. I think that there's some of that is probably they're just disorganized because exactly things got done and were ready to print and maybe it wasn't the right order or was just, this was what was done in time. And I have a feeling that every Legion has custom creators out there where they've got some artist commissioned to sculpt this stuff and put it together. And some are just faster than others and do a better job getting what they want out of it, right? I'm sure there's some that have been rejected and all kinds of things. Well, there's some that should have been rejected, Space Wolves, Banana Fur. That's the other part about all this, right? It's still, there's still that whole people artist thing that goes into how this stuff came out in order and what was published when, too.
Oh, yeah, I can't disagree there at all.
I'm starting to think they commissioned George R.R. Martin to sculpt the Iron Hands Praetor model.
Why do you say that?
Because it's taking forever.
Well, no, because then they would put one out and it would suck, and then they would get a chance to redo it.
But only if it was on the TV show.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. I will say that I do know that Dan Abnett and all the people who did the last several not Heresy, but the Siege of Terra, talked about in their various videos promoting the Siege of Terra novels and in the afterwards of the novels leading up to the siege and during the siege, they talked about how there was a giant roadmap that had been developed throughout the writing of the Heresy. So I kind of wonder if the roadmap came about because of books and everything not quite meeting expectation and everything kind of blowing up.
We kind of got that idea from them when they started scheduling. I think they called it the Council of Terra meetings, where they would have all of the authors come in and then sit around a table and they would say, okay, especially around the time of Prospero Burns, when they were doing that duality book.
Yeah.
So they basically had everyone come in and say, okay, well, I'm going to write Bjorn, but Bjorn has to show up in your story too. So how are you going to take him and move him through your story? But then he's also going to show up down here. So how is he going to show up over there? And I think for the most part, they did pretty good on those. The worst ones were obviously the was it Master of Mankind, where the some of those things were out of order, like time wise,
Yes.
where Prospero ended up happening before.
Oh
the
no, you're
Spawn
thinking
3
of Outcast
Massacre.
Dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. And that was Graham McNeil, who he's one of the better writers, and Brandon really likes him for Iron Warriors, but I think he's very inconsistent sometimes. And Outcast Dead is why.
He's one of the old guard regards to their novels. I mean, he wrote Storm of Iron back in 02, 03.
I just picked that one up and started reading it. I haven't read it yet. I'm only halfway through.
It's definitely older. It's a good book. It introduces Deus Area. You introduce Kroger and Forex and all them.
Do we think one of the main characters they had mapped through for key points was John Grammaticus?
I don't know. I'm not really sold on this, because if they had been doing this from the outset, in the very first book, Horus Rising, Dan Abnett sets up Ignaeus Carcassy, the poet, to be this kind of naysayer and like putting out, anti-imperial messages, and then in the second book, Graham McNeil comes in and kills him off. I think, like, not even I don't even think it's at the end. I think it's like halfway through or something. Yeah,
it's halfway through the novel.
Kills off Ignaeus Carcassy, who was set up to be this, anti-imperialist, or at least spreading anti-imperial propaganda, and that never happens. Graham McNeil just kills him off, and if Dan Abnett was like, "Hey, you got to do something significant with this character," and like put doubt in the minds of the people, he never gets that opportunity.
Yeah, I think they had in the beginning they had a Star Wars sequel problem where they just knew where they. But they were a little more developed in the Star Wars sequels, in that they knew at least the end story, and they just kind of let everyone go where they wanted, which is why Karn went nuts for a little bit, and then later they added
and all that.
Yeah, then they added in the ideas of, okay, we probably need to get an idea of what we're doing and where we're doing it and how we're doing it with the meetings.
There was a thing. I could be absolutely balls out wrong on this.
ADB's blogs talked about him too a bit.
I remember a while back I read something that was done by Dan Abnett, and he had talked about how he had originally, when they were doing the Tanith series, the Gaunt's Ghost novels, he'd been approached by GW to write basically 3 books purely about heresy, for literally the betrayal of Horus and everything, for the entire Horus heresy, condense everything into 3 novels and put it out. And he apparently went back and looked into everything and said, there's no way all of this can be fit in the 3 novels. And he wrote the first one and showed it to them, and they said, oh Lord, this might be true. You might need more novels. We might need more authors. Am I crazy on that, or is that making sense to anybody?
No, that absolutely follows.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 3, and then it was supposed to be 8, and then it was we just invented a money printing machine.
And it went burr.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about, especially with like characters being handled by others, and especially with the art side of things, we've been talking about on our show, and this is kind of revolving around Warwick and I's argument about Graham McNeil. But when these authors get the Legion that you can tell that they're clearly passionate about, I really think that every single one of them knocks it out of the park. We saw James Swallow with the with the Blood Angels. Fear to Tread is a great book. I have my qualms with that one, but it's still very well written. Graham McNeil with the Iron Warriors, same thing. I mean, Dan Abnett's just a talented writer. He does pretty well with anything. Although, hot take, I don't actually think Prospero Burns is a very good book, but that's just me.
No, you're right. He, for some reason, when he was talking about Thousand Suns, he said that they were very Aztec-like, and I was like, oh, I'm glad that they took those away from him.
When Dan Abnett tries to do this like mystery box, I don't think he does very well. And ironically, it's what makes No Fear so good, is because he just right out of the gate is like, this is exactly what's going to happen. And then he does a great job still building it from there.
So
his endings are also pretty bad. If you've read Titanicus, which is a 40K book that kind of ties into Mechanicus, which was the 30K book, the book ends and it literally says, and then the largest Titan battle outside the Heresy was fought. I was like, but Dan, we wanted to see the Titan fight.
Yeah. So, given what you just said about Dan, what do you think about Legion?
I quite enjoy Legion.
Yeah, I like Legion too. I think that's so. We get a really weird through line here. Is that like the first 5 books are super consistent, and then the next 5 after that, or the next 6 actually after, I don't know. So the next 4 books, so Descent of Angels, Legion, Battle for the Abyss, and Mechanicum, they are all 4 very different books, and then we get into Tales of Heresy, which is a anthology book that kind of gets. Anyway, what I'm getting at is we have this very consistent through line of the first 5 books, and then it kind of throws us into this big disarray following that, and it's all very scattered. Tales of Heresy kind of brings it back to very heresy focused in a broad sense. But I think as far as a kind of beginner stories going, Descent of Angels is good. It's one that I like. Legion is a good one that I like, just because they are beginner stories for different legions, or like it's the first time we see legions as a whole. They're not like scattered, or they're not broken up into an anthology book like we get with Night Lords. Well, I guess Raven Guard do have their own first book, but after that, it's basically anthologies for them. I think Legion is a really good kind of back to square one, or kind of rolling the clock back kind of book, compared to Descent of Angels is super disjarring, like you guys said. I think Legion handles it a little bit better, but I still like both books.
I'm going to push back on you there. I actually think that most of the hate that Descent of Angels gets is because it comes behind Fulgrim.
Just because of where it's at in the Heresy, is that what you're saying?
Just where it is in the book order.
Yeah. I can see that, because I honestly, I think Fulgrim's a marvelous book.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It upset a lot of people, though.
Well, and
yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of.
Fulgrim is it has a lot of upsetting scenes in it. Let's be honest.
You're talking about the Emperor's Children, so it's going to have upsetting stuff, especially as they do their fall, and then the barrel of bodies and everything for painting with. Yeah, everything's weird in that.
But I think that's part of what, 1, sets the tone for the Legion, and 2, makes it a great book.
It made the book creepy as hell for me, but I really enjoyed it. I really did. And I've gone back and reread it a couple times, and it's still creepy, but man,
it's one of those. It's one of those that. So I don't like horror movies, and I like horror book, and the reason, and especially like Cthulhu Mythos esque kind of things, and the reason is because my mind can scare myself a lot more than somebody else can. And so by setting a scene and letting me figure out where it goes, I get a lot more scared or creeped out. And I think that Fulgrim is that way, in that it tells you what's going on there, but it also kind of delves into what is the depths of depravity that a mind can go to given the right influence, right? And so, they're kind of being influenced by chaos, but they're also just like delving into the depths of human depravity on their own to some extent. And so I think that that's why it creeps you out, but because it does it so well by skirting that line is part of the reason what makes it good and readable, I think.
I'll agree there. I'll actually wholeheartedly agree there. It's definitely a different kind of novel for the Heresy series, but it worked so very well, especially since it was about the Emperor's Children and basically their fall to the oblivion of horrible that they are these days.
The Emperor's Children are gross and weird, and the book Fulgrim is also very gross and very weird.
That I can't disagree there.
I mean, Bradbury's my favorite author ever, so kind of weird is where I live. So that's probably why I like it.
Somehow that fits you, Dan. It really, truly does.
But yeah, I don't think that probably surprised anybody who knows me and knows Bradbury stuff.
No, not really. So, okay, well, we've talked about books a lot. We can talk about, heck, honestly, I could talk about the entire Heresy series of novels until midnight or later and still want to talk more. So, what about your chosen legions, deviating from the novels bit a bit, made you choose them for Heresy? What drove you or brought you into wanting to play them for Heresy? Was it fluff? Was it rules? Was it pretty paint schemes? What did it for you all?
Well, Warwick, why don't you lead off here?
Okay. So like I said, I picked Ultramarines specifically because of No Fear. It is a fantastic book. It made me love the Ultramarines. And as far as rules go, I love their tactical flexibility. Their Rite of War, the Logos Locatora, is fantastic. I basically can't build a list without it now. I was telling Brandon about this a while back. I've got no reason to take any other Rite of War. The Logos is just so good. So I've actually challenged myself recently to build some alternate Rite of War lists. I've got a Armored Spearhead list that I really like the look of. But anyway, that's why I picked Ultramarines. I think they're really cool. Aesthetically, they're very cool to me. Invictaris Suzerain are just amazing. Probably one of the best units in the whole game. For my Traitor Legion, I went Night Lords, and that is because they are creepy boys. And I think that they're sometimes like the first short story we get with Sevatar. He's so sarcastic and kind of witty, and I definitely really got to appreciate him as a character. So he alone kind of sold me on the Legion. Their whole aesthetic too is really cool. Like I'm a big Vampire Counts fan from Old World. I don't really I've got a bunch of Soulblight models for AOS, but I don't really play that. So if I ever get the opportunity to do a a Vampire Counts army, I will definitely be doing that. But that aesthetic alone really sold me on the Night Lords as well, because it's very similar, like the flayed flesh and the skull masks and the winged helmets. I think that stuff is so cool. Their whole aesthetic is really cool. I like their rules. They're really dirty and just kind of neat to me. So that's why I went Ultramarines and Night Lords.
Yeah, so I actually have 3 legions because I'm an army collecting addict. But I started off with Dark Angels. And the reason I started off with Dark Angels is because our little group that all got into Heresy together told me I had to play a Loyalist. And I did it kicking and screaming and decided to split the baby and just play Dark Angels. So I did kind of dig the Knights in Space aesthetic. But that was about the reason I picked them. And then I picked Emperor's Children, honestly, because I wanted to paint purple. I was like, I had a pretty cool recipe for painting purple. I wanted to do that, so I went ahead and did it. And then Iron Warriors, as I said, are absolutely my favorite legion because of all the lore. I love the look of them. I love big guns and artillery, so they are my favorites for that. But that's why I picked the 3 that I picked.
Okay. That makes sense. It's each case something different that appeals for various reasons. Warwick, I assume you have read the Night Lords trilogy by ADB at this point.
No, I've got the first book, and it's in my queue of things to read. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I've heard it's very good though.
Yeah, yeah, I would say of the 40K novels I've read, the trilogy of those and then the 2 short stories that feature Talos and company are probably in my top all-time 40K fiction. To be honest.
I had seen them and I had not read them yet. And I was talking to some Warhammer meme pages or something like that. I was texting one of their admins a while back, and I was asking them for recommendations. And if you'll kind of notice, whenever you ask anybody for 40K novel recommendations, they'll kind of recommend you the same battery of books that everybody else does. And it's like the Eisenhorn series,
Which is
Caiaphas
phenomenal.
Cain. Yeah, and these are all very good books. I'm not knocking the books, but you're generally going to get the same answer. Eisenhorn, Caiaphas Cain, Gaunt's Ghost, um, Storm of Iron. I can't remember the other go-to, but the Night Lords trilogy was not on there. I had not heard of that one. Like I said, I'd seen them, and I know that ADB is an amazing author. Like he did Hell's Reach, and that's fantastic.
You can't ever say anything bad about Hell's Reach.
Yeah. Have you watched the animated one on YouTube? Oh, it's so good. That's the guy that did. I think the same guy that did that did Angels of Death on for games for their animated studio or whatever.
I believe he did.
Yep. So I was really shocked to, in kind of retrospect, see that these Night Lords books are getting such high praise, and I hadn't heard any of that from all the usual sources. So I was just kind of curious to me.
Well, I will say there is what was it? A couple of the characters in the Night Lords trilogy do make actual appearances on the walls of Terra. And I think one or two of them are mentioned in other novels in passing. Now, obviously, these are in ADB books about the Night Lords, so it's a kind of a nice thing to have done. And I like, one of the things, my favorite things about the Heresy novels is that sometimes you'll see someone who's in one of the novels at the beginning who's like literally just like a legionnaire sergeant or just a brother legionnaire who towards the end of like the Siege of Terra is now actually a captain of a company and has a much more named character role, things to that effect. But
yeah,
one of my other favorite things is seeing like Lycoraphus from the Night Lords novels was the first Night Lord to reach the top of the walls at the Siege of Terra. So that's something I've always found kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I always like those little Easter eggs. Like there's a reference to Sergeant Damocles in No Fear. And Damocles is the name of the squad, the squad heraldry in Brothers of the Snake, which is an Ultramarine successor chapter. The Iron Snakes are a Ultramarine successor chapter, and Sergeant Damocles he was part of that founding and founded that squad.
Was that book the one with they had like a power trident for a weapon?
No, they had a power claw. The chapter master has like a big spear or a trident or something.
Okay.
Yeah, they did the Thermopylae 300.
Okay, yeah. That's
and then
what I was thinking. Yeah, carry on.
Like in Fear to Tread, like all the captains, like Furio, I can't remember his name, but he's the Flesh Terror. So Furio is the kind of the reason that Blood Angels have the Furio dreadnoughts. And then Amit, it's Captain Amit, is the founder of the Flesh Terrors chapter. And so these are all like 30K names that we know the reference of in 40K. And then like in Angel Exterminatus, that is a straight up prequel to Storm of Iron. And because all the characters are basically the same guys. So when you see those little Easter eggs, I think that's really cool. It's something I enjoy about it. I really enjoy consistent writing, and when we see those references, that really kind of drives it home for me.
I have to say, one of the things that from Unremembered Empire is I love Valentus Dolar, and I'm not the only one that assumes he's the founder, leader of the white consoles, right? He's the one wearing white armor with blue instead of blue on white when he meets Gilliman. I've always thought about doing a small force of white consoles to go along with that theory.
I don't like that book.
Why, if you don't mind?
I'm not a fan of Unremembered Empire. I think it's just kind of sprawling. I think it kind of suffers from bloat. Abnett tries to work in like a ton of these, at least like there's two of the Cabal characters, and then he's also trying to work with this word bearer's subplot line, and it just feels like nobody really gets enough screen time. Gilliman doesn't feel as consistent in Unremembered Empire as he does in No Fear. Sanguinius is not the same person as he is in Fear to Tread, and Night Haunter is not consistent with any writing that we've had of him up until this point.
I mean, I see where you're coming from on those three. I personally don't dislike Unremembered at all. I see it kind of as them trying to gather all these different focal threads to then kind of power forward in the story. I see it kind of like it's like rounding, like this is second base. After the Heresy got started, this is them reaching second base, spreading the wings for the stories that will lead to third base and then to home, if that makes any sense for a baseball analogy, because this leads to Pharaohs. This leads to the Ruin Storm, and this kind of gathers the Glorious Hawk Boy and then Rowboat and then the Lion all together for the push and punch towards Terra. So I see where you're coming from, because it does feel kind of disjointed, and the characters definitely feel different than they have appeared before in the past.
I see what you're saying about it. It's a necessary vessel for weaving together these narrative threads. I think that the inconsistency in the characters that we get really hurts.
I could agree there. I think it's definitely one of the weaker books in the series, but it's not. I think it's a vital one that does need to be read, but I think it's not one of the best, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I love the, like I said, that Dolar, just the white with blue and a chance to hobby and paint something up a little bit different, and then the headcanon that goes to the white consoles and all that kind of stuff is kind of neat. It also has one of my favorite lines when Kurz called Gilliman the war accountant, because that's to your point of the flawed Ultramarines in Heresy and all. I think that sums up all of the good and bad of Ultramarines in the Horus Heresy that make them the characterful legion that is why I play them a lot of the time. So I love that too.
So I'd love to ask this question of you guys, if I could. One of the kind of major events areas of major events groups that's running in the Midwest is the Phoenix guys, who shout out to them. They put on excellent events. But one of the things yes, friends of ours as well. One of the things they've decided with their campaign is no more named characters, no unique type characters, no Primarchs or anything like that. Being fans of the books like you guys are and like we are, what do you guys think of, I personally, I love running the named characters. One of the main things that I do love about it. Obviously for them, I don't, but I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on running named characters versus not running named characters, and kind of your thoughts there.
I think the names of the named characters in the books, are the stories of the named characters in the books, are told really well. I don't think I've ever played a game of Heresy with a named character on my side, and I prefer to narratively build my own characters out over playing with named characters in my battles, and I love that concept. My 2 cents. Everybody plays Heresy for different reasons, and I get it. People want to tell more stories with the named characters. That's the opposite of what I generally want to do.
Yeah, a lot of the reason that they kind of limit that is the big thing is with the Phoenix campaigns is they're trying to tell their own stories, and so the problem you run into is, it's the same thing if you had named characters in World War II. Rommel isn't going to be at the Battle for Verdun or something like that. You're going to kind of be limited with what you can tell with where you're going, depending on who's going to be there. So that's kind of the reason they started limiting it. And then I think that they've kind of replace that with the customizable character creator is a great way for people to not just invent their own, but you could also kind of come through and say, I wasn't that happy with how Ventatis kind of changed some of the things in my list. I want to be able to make my own, console that started out as a standard bearer, but now that he's up in the rank, he can lead better. So therefore, he's going to be my praetor that ascended from that rank of console.
One of the things I've always enjoyed is building my own characters, be it third edition fantasy with the dwarf runes, be it second edition with making my own custom chaos lords and building stories for them, be it Heresy last edition, Heresy this edition. I've always liked to be able to build my own dude. I've always liked the idea of being able to sit there and say, oh, these guys in this company or this legion or this whatever were also present at this big battle. So for my previous World Leaders army, I built it to be based around the Battle of Armatura. Yes, I built a Karn, but I also built other characters who were there. Like I built a Skane, I built a Delvaris, and I used them to be the leaders for the army because they're not Karn. There are other characters who obviously look cool, and I can explain to someone that, hey, this is supposed to be representing Delvaris. So I've got him armed this way, built this way, so he could look cool.
Does he have like a scorch mark on his helmet from a last bolt?
Yes, he does.
Nice. That's
yes,
awesome.
He does. And he's also got a shield because he led the Breachers, who were supposed to defend the Conqueror. And I've got his meteor hammer, and he literally has just that for gear. So, I mean, that's kind of the thing. I always love building my own character, building my own story inside of everything that's going on. For my Sons of Horus, I used to use the Little Legends not Horus Axeman model to represent my Sons of Horus guys being the gentleman who went in underneath the Siege of Terra and died in Saturnine in attempting to break through the walls underneath of it. So I've always thought it was kind of cool to do stuff like that. Not have the named characters in the game, but have them be named character adjacent or someone who was also there, even if they have a different name in my army. So I'm not really too upset about not playing with a Praetor who's like Abaddon or Karn. I'm also definitely not too upset by not being able to throw down Horus or Sanguinius, because I think part of the big fun is they weren't everywhere, and yet the entire galaxy was at war, and everywhere was fighting, and you never know who was where or what forces were led by who. So you could easily just pluck names out of the black books and be like, nope, my forces are allied to this guy. We're doing this. We're going forward here. And that's always just been something that really spoke to me to be able to do that. Sorry.
No, I mean, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, I enjoy making my own characters as well. It's just I also enjoy playing with the named guys. I think it's fun to see how they do, and especially in a system where every legion has their Primarch. I think I'm seemingly on the unpopular side of things, that I'm always down to throw Primarchs on the table.
I don't like Primarchs in 30K because I don't feel that they can be represented well on the battlefield. But, personally, I don't run Primarchs very often. I think I've run Mortarion in 3 games in the whole time Horus Heresy's been out. But I've got no qualms playing against it. And I like seeing the lesser named characters, people other than first captains like Sigismund, Typhus, or Callus Typhon. But yeah, it's all good with me.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It was kind of almost like a shock to me when I first got into Heresy, of like, oh, this is the Horus Heresy. Every legion's got their Primarch. Also, don't ever bring them.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of a thing. I kind of get where Brian's coming from, and I kind of get where I'm coming from, and everybody else. Yes, I enjoy seeing a Primarch on the battlefield. I love seeing the beautifully painted dude that is a centerpiece for an army across the table. I hate having to deal with them when they're on in the field, and I'm sitting there trying to shoot them with whatever because I predominantly don't play shooting armies, but that's just me.
Well, and also, I think one of the things that we probably suffer from a little bit, if you want to say that way, we all came from first edition, right? In an army because of their benefits to the army as much as the Primarch power themselves, an army led by a Primarch was a different power level than an army not in most cases. And so it really was, chances are, if someone brought a Primarch and you weren't either really set up to target it or also had a Primarch, you were at a disadvantage. So it was like everybody bring a Primarch or nobody bring a Primarch, and that was that. I think that this edition is a little better in that regard, but I think a lot of us that have been around since first edition kind of still have that built into our head that it's a thing, and it's just a hard stigma to get around too.
Yeah, I kind of see that. I see where you're coming from on that. I mean, we all, or I'm not gonna say all because I can't really say that, but I know a lot of us played in like 5th edition, 6th edition, 7th edition, 40K, where seeing people build armies purely based on named characters and what they would unlock for you was kind of a thing. So,
I mean, it started in late 3rd and 4th, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're really right. It did, but it does. I guess in some ways feel kind of different to see people not bringing them because they are building their own narrative, and which is they're building their own story, which is, I think, honestly, the part of the biggest thing for going for Heresy is there's so much that went on in such a short time period that you really can do that and have it actually make sense both on the table and narratively for your army and for the game that you and your opponent or friend are playing. And that actually brings me to kind of a cool segue of, hey, listeners, and anyone else who's going to be listening in, like the Legioncast guys, we're running a contest. John, what's the contest we're running right now?
Absolutely. So the contest is write a short, kind of one-page descriptor of your army or a character, and what brought you to that army, and what the kind of goals and objectives are of the army. So the instance I use is for my militia. It was founded by the commander who landed on the planet of Cobra in the Ultramar system, set up a fiefdom, and eventually when Gulliman got around to reclaiming that part of the 500 worlds, Gulliman walked up and the commander saw that, the vast legions arrayed against him were no match for the meager force that he had, and threw his lot in with the Imperium of Man and decided to help conquer and bring, all of the technology that Cobra had alongside the Imperium to help conquer for the greater good of humanity. Obviously, you don't have to write it that way. You can write more in depth, or you can write a story about why you chose a specific character or sergeant, or a really cool game that you had with a character or sergeant. We really just kind of want a quick kind of fluff story of what's going on and why it happens. And then the prize for that is going to be a complete 6x4 set of city terrain supplied by our friends at Death Ray Designs, painted by myself. Painted and weathered by myself. And then there's going to be a mat that goes under that, supplied by our friends at Fat Mat.
That Death Ray terrain is fantastic. We played on that the big interior of the spaceship board that the Theorix guys put together. Brandon and I played a game on that. It was awesome. That, like I said, that Death Ray Designs terrain is awesome.
Yeah, they make really cool stuff. I started back when they started their Kickstarter almost 8 years ago, and I've been with them ever since. Some of the best MDF terrain on the market.
Absolutely. A couple of years back, I had them do a custom display board for me and just build up pieces that could represent the interior of a starship. And I have absolutely loved all their stuff ever since I first got that. And I'm a huge fan. And I'm so glad that they sponsored this for us. Do we have anything else we would like to discuss tonight, gentlemen? At this point, we've been rambling on for almost an hour and a half, and I think we've covered quite a bit.
We do have one quick correction on our Beta Garmin coverage.
Is it one or is it two?
I know that I have one. Do you have one as well?
I have one as well.
Okay.
So I'll let you go first.
So yeah, the issue is if you read the reconnaissance pattern cohort, it says that Sola Auxilia Velataris assault squadrons get outflank. And when I had read that at the time, I assumed immediately that that meant it was talking about the Hermes Velataris, which is mentioned in the book later. The problem, however, is that there is no such thing in the book as a Velataris assault squadron. The closest thing to Thor's assault squadron is the Leman Russ assault squadron, which comes in the main book. And then if you do just a complete search for Velataris assault squadrons, on page 185, there's a picture of the Hermes, and it says that this is a Velataris assault squadron to strike marauding trader forces. So I assumed that the Hermes was the Velataris assault squadron, and I would assume that most EOs are going to say the same thing, but as of right now, that's not official GW. There is really nothing that the reconnaissance pattern cohort allows you to take larger squads of Hermes and larger squads of Atheons, but right now the outflank technically doesn't work. So I would discuss that with your EO before going to events. What do you got, Duncan?
I'm actually opening my book because it's a lot easier to find what I'm looking for than it is to go through my PDF. So long as I can actually find what I'm looking for in the book. This is me stalling for time because I can. Okay, so
I'm gonna have to edit stuff.
Nah, he won't have to edit this. The Legion Company Command Squad.
You're right.
Yep. Legion Company Command Squad may only be selected as part of a detachment that includes at least one Legion Opte or Legion Centurion model. That does not mean that if you take a console of a chaplain or a champion or a herald or any other console type that you can take that command squad for them, because you can't. This is in the actual rules for the console types. Those console types replace the unit Centurion or Legion Centurion rule. So you cannot currently take a command squad for your chaplain and etc. That is a different thing that I had not noticed when we started talking about it last week, and huge mea culpa on that. And a big thank you to Eric Ness, who pointed that out to me and brought that into the channel to discuss that, because that was something that we all missed.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Will Frank for pointing out the Velataris assault squadron parts.
Yes. Thanks out to both of them. That's the only thing that I had to bring up.
So in that case, how does the Moritat get a command squad? Because that was the whole. Everyone was happy that he could take command squads.
Don't think he can. I think people misread that, and no one actually read the rule where console takes over for Centurion.
That kind of bites.
I kind of agree. But it is what it is. Anyhow, gentlemen, does anyone have anything else they would like to discuss this evening? Hearing no objections then, John, you want to go ahead and close us out?
Absolutely. So, gentlemen, I'd like to thank everybody for coming along and joining us today on the 78th episode of the Heresy Accountabilibuddies. I've been John, and tonight I've been joined by...
Brian.
Dan.
Duncan.
Jack.
Warwick.
Brandon.
And always remember to stay accountable to your hobby and to your buddies. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.